News Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Matisse says, "Give me the run." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Saturday, March 7th, 2026. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 539 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. That's probably as fitting as it's ever been since I've been saying that since I've been doing this podcast. Hello from the Schottenstein Center. It's still March 7th. It's about to become March 8th, and we're going to lose an hour. I have no earthly way of knowing what time this podcast is actually going to end. I can never remember when we exactly moved the clocks forward. We'll see if I'm still talking when that happens. My goodness, are there 9 million things to get into here? This was a day that I feel like will be long remembered in Ohio State men's basketball. There were probably 4 or 5 different things that we could devote an entire podcast to on their own. I'm going to try to hit on as many things as I can and keep this at a reasonable length. I will do another podcast on Tuesday, probably Tuesday afternoon. Look for it Wednesday morning, possibly, because we are officially done with the regular season. We closed the book on the 31-game gauntlet that we've all been on here following this Ohio State men's basketball team, and the Buckeyes close it with some gusto. Final tonight from the Schottenstein Center, Ohio State 91, Indiana 78. It frankly wasn't as close as even the final score might indicate. Ohio State took a 17-point lead into the half, led by 24 points about 8 minutes into the second half, and had a double-digit lead for the final 24 minutes and change. And frankly, there's not a ton from the play-by-play. Like I mentioned on the last podcast, I feel like there's not a ton from the play-by-play. It's like, man, like this sequence, that sequence. Like Ohio State took the lead for good when it was 6-5. Amari Bynum with a steal and then a fast break dunk. Ohio State goes up 6-5, and the Buckeyes would not trail from that point. It was 6-6. It was 8-8, and then Christoph Tilley scored in the paint. That made it 10-8, and Indiana wouldn't even be able to tie the game at that point. It was just a steady, consistent pulling away by Ohio State. And then the Buckeyes just kept the Hoosiers at arm's length, which was all the more impressive given all of the things going into this game. Starting with the fact that certainly senior day. And there's a lot to unpack there, and I think you could go through all 3 of the seniors on this team and probably give you some pretty interesting background and insight into why that would make a day like this a special one. But certainly it's probably an injustice to everybody that I haven't mentioned Bruce Thornton's name yet, because this podcast is going to almost exclusively be focused on Bruce Thornton and on what this day was and what this day meant to him, because this was like every bit of everything seemed to be focused on Bruce Thornton and all the things that make Bruce Thornton, and then what that would mean for Ohio State as it chases an NCAA tournament berth. Certainly Ohio State came into this game feeling pretty good about its hopes to get into March Madness. The win against Purdue, and then following that with the road beatdown against Penn State, all significantly impacted Ohio State's analytics and all the numbers, all the stuff that would indicate this is a tournament team. And then you have a chance at home against a team that, yes, technically I suppose Ohio State and Indiana were both in the bubble picture, but Ohio State, much more comfortable spot than that. And Indiana, theoretically, the more desperate team. So put all that in like one column. Then put in the fact that Bruce Thornton was 12 points from the all-time leading scoring, or the all-time scoring crown at Ohio State. Put that in another column. This is Bruce Thornton's senior day. Player who, one of 22 high major men's basketball players to play all 4 or 5 years at the same school this year, according to some research done by CBS. So, like, add all of that on top of this. And then it's Bruce Thornton bobblehead day. And, oh, by the way, it ends up being a sellout crowd. This is the first time Ohio State's had a sellout crowd in years. The Buckeyes last sold out this arena it was March 6th, 2022. And you might remember that game. Ohio State hosted Michigan. The Wolverines came in. They did not have Hunter Dickinson, who was ill. If memory serves, Juwan Howard wasn't even coaching that game. Phil Martelli was coaching that game. And Michigan handed Ohio State a 75-69 loss. This was not that. This was Ohio State gets Indiana on its home floor for senior day and thoroughly dominates the Hoosiers, essentially from tip to whistle. And in the process, does all of that while Bruce Thornton is chasing the all-time scoring mark and trying to cement his first NCAA tournament berth. There's just so much that went into this game. And honestly, I came out of this game saying, I feel like I've written a Bruce Thornton story essentially every day this week. There's been so much to get into. There's so much to talk about. There's so much kind of at play. And there was still more to come out of this game. And I think this was an all-time night. And I try on these podcasts not to be too prisoner of the moment. I try not to get too crazy with the hyperbole or the best since whatever. But this might have been, like, with all the things that went into this game and the journey that this season has been, and that the seemingly aimless wandering at times of the program for the last however long you want to define that, this felt like it all kind of hit at once. It all arrived. And I would be hard pressed. There's two games that sort of immediately jump out to me in my 11 years now covering this team for the Dispatch, where what I experienced in the arena tonight matched up. One of them was beating Duke here a couple years back, but that was different. That was 3 games. Beating Duke, some of that is just you're playing Duke. And Cedric Russell had a big game that game, if memory serves. That was always going to be a big game because it was Duke. Certainly, Ohio State beating Purdue a few days after firing Chris Holtmann and Jake Diebler taking over as interim coach. Like, there was so much that went into that too. And then you go back to Chris Holtmann's first year, and you go back to Ohio State hosting Michigan State in this arena, and it felt like that, like Andrew Dockich banks in the 3 at the half, like from half court. And that was like a, hey, things are changing type of game, type of moment. And that's what this felt like. There have been so many times this season where I have come on this podcast and I've said something to the effect of, however you want to feel about this program, like, this result probably isn't going to change it. If you like the direction, if you don't like the direction, like, you're going to have to make up your own mind at this point, because it just seems to kind of be what it is. This stretch of play right now, I think, is the strongest indicator yet of where things could be headed. And this game on the cusp of this winning streak that Ohio State is on now encapsulates that vision for the future. And I'll get more into that in a minute, but it all revolves around Bruce Thornton today. And, you know, we can look at his stat line. Bruce Thornton played 38 minutes and 29 seconds in this game. He finished with 25 points, game high 25 points. He took 9 shots. Bruce Thornton was 7 of 9 from the floor. He drew 7 fouls while committing 1, went 9 for 11 from the free throw line, and added 7 assists, 2 steals, 0 turnovers. So that's 25 points, 7 fouls drawn, 7 assists, 2 steals, no turnovers in 38 minutes and 29 seconds on senior day in a game that Ohio State needed to really feel good about its NCAA tournament chances. And oh, by the way, he became the all-time leading scorer in program history. That is a bonkers statement. There is so much there to unpack. And certainly we can get into what Ohio State's defense did against the Hoosiers. We can talk about how Tucker DeVries went 1 of 7 from 3 in this game, and Ohio State kind of kept him out of things. Lamar Wilkerson played the entire game, had 18 points, but needed 15 shots to get there. We can talk about all that stuff. And there are a couple of Ohio State numbers that merit some further discussion. But, like, so much of this is Bruce Thornton. So much of this day was Bruce Thornton. And that's where we're going to have most of the focus on this as we move forward here. So I'm going to start diving into that in just a second. Before I do, I want to remind you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever else you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe or download, or if you subscribe, you automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks everyone who's taking the time to do all those things. Great time of year to be getting into the podcast. These are going to be coming much more frequently now, especially if Ohio State manages to hang around in Chicago for a couple of days. You get a podcast after every game. That won't change. So there's a lot to get into. Also, I would be not doing my job if I don't point out. So we have just passed midnight, which means that we are 1 week from Selection Sunday. We're 1 week from having brackets in our hands and from learning where Ohio State will be playing in the NCAA tournament. It's pretty exciting stuff. Like, even just unbiased, straight down the middle of the road. Like, I love the NCAA tournament, and I'm excited about the possibility of getting to cover it once again. There's nothing better in this job than covering the NCAA tournament. It is just my favorite thing, and it's feeling real. I'm excited about that. All right, so Bruce Thornton. Now, I wasn't sure coming in, like, is the lead to the story going to be, or is the most noteworthy thing for Bruce Thornton going to be like when he passes the record, how he breaks the record, the potentially securing his spot on the right side of the bubble, NCAA tournament talk, like all that stuff. So this was really interesting to me. And I had the last, like basically the last two. There were three final questions to Bruce Thornton, and I was looking at it yesterday and realizing how Ohio State has not beaten Indiana in quite some time. It's a 5-game losing streak coming into this game. So I asked Bruce once I started looking at it, because it turns out that Bruce Thornton had defeated 16 Big Ten teams. The one Big Ten team in his 4 years at Ohio State he had never beaten was Indiana. So again, like quick side tangent. There have been so many games, I feel like, in these 11 years. Like, I've covered Ohio State playing at Michigan State on Senior Day, Ohio State playing at Indiana on Senior Day, and I mean, like, Ohio State was the foil to Cassius Winston's Senior Day at Michigan State, and that was one of those, like, you walk in there and you're just like, you ain't winning tonight. Like, it is not gonna happen for you. Like, Cassius Winston is not losing on Senior night. And I thought that in general about Bruce Thornton, especially given how this team has played here the last week. Especially the results this team has gotten in the last week. And then I add in, and a chance to break the scoring record, and bobblehead day, and again, Senior Day. And then he had never beaten Indiana until today. That was the final thing that I thought to myself when I realized that, doing some prep work yesterday. I thought, Ohio State's winning this game. Bruce Thornton is not going to lose with all of that stuff happening. It just never seemed like I couldn't close my eyes and picture Ohio State not winning once I realized that. And so that was my first question to Bruce Thornton, was I wanted to know if he was aware of that. And you can go watch the video at dispatch.com of the press conference. It's toward the end. But I said, Indiana was the only Big Ten team you had not beaten. Were you aware of that? His answer was, oh, most definitely. He said, that was the biggest thing out of everything tonight. I can't go out not beating Indiana. It wasn't the scoring record. It wasn't the tournament. It was, I can't go out of college not beating Indiana. Now, he did point out that, like, Gabe Cupps had been giving him some stick and saying, like, how he had never lost to Ohio State. Like, there's certainly, like, some of that stuff to it. But, like, it reminded me a little bit of, like, that Jordan documentary where it was like, and I realize I'm not saying Bruce Thornton is Michael Jordan, and I just pump the brakes on that stuff. But the way that Michael Jordan would find any little slight or any little whatever to give him, like, that little extra bit of motivation that really came across in that documentary, this kind of reminded me of that a little bit, because I thought, I figured he probably knew, but But I didn't think he would say that that was his biggest thing, that he had to beat Indiana. He couldn't leave Ohio State without having beaten Indiana. Like, that was really interesting to me. And so there was that. And then the manner in which Bruce broke the scoring record, I think, speaks volumes about who he is, what he's been at Ohio State, and what kind of legacy he does ultimately leave at Ohio State. It was clear from like the jump that everything Bruce did was getting extra high-level attention from the fans. This was a great basketball crowd. Like, you had a crowd that was getting louder as Indiana's offensive possessions stretched further into the shot clock. This was a crowd that, when someone made the right read defensively and was able to cut something off, they appreciated it. They clapped louder. This might have been the best crowd in 11 years. Again, try not to be prisoner of the moment, but they were dialed in at a high level for this game. If you were here, pat yourself on the back, because this was impressive stuff. And along those lines, you could just feel like as this went on that they were they're counting the points. Certainly everybody was aware like how close he was to the record, and it got steadily louder and louder and louder. And I was wondering, like, would he come out and like try to hit a couple shots early to try to maybe take the pressure off, or just like remove that from the equation? And the answer was no. Bruce came out and kind of, I don't want to say took his time, but was certainly not forcing the issue. He was distributing. Amari Bynum was significant early. I mean, he continues to really come on here late, but Bruce didn't score until more than 4 minutes into the game. 15:52 left in the first half. He scored on a layup. And then he airballed a three on the next possession. Then he didn't take a shot until 9:49 left in the game. He hit a three-pointer there to move him to 5 points on the game. He already had 2 assists by this point. Now, he had 3 more assists before he took another shot. So with 4:33 to go in the first half, Bruce Thornton has 5 points and 5 assists. And Ohio State leads 35-27. So now he starts to get going. He scores on one of his jumpers near the paint, 37-29. He's got 7 points. He gets another assist. So he's got 7 points, 6 assists with 3:35 to go in the half. Then he scored. So he's like right there, right? So he gets a layup with 1:11 to go that makes it a 47-31 Ohio State lead. So he's 2 points behind at this point. And when Indiana scores, Thornton comes down and pretty much immediately drills a three-pointer, breaking the record. The place goes nuts. They would recognize him at halftime, but like play continued. And when we asked him about I thought in that moment, it's like, man, he knows that he needs 3 more points. And he's going to go and he's going to get this over with. As Lee Corso likes to say, not so fast, my friend, because Bruce told us after the game that because of the time that was left on the clock, so Indiana scored on a drive from Connor Enright. So Enright's bucket came with 55 seconds left. And because of that, Ohio State wanted to go 2 for 1. Thornton was trying to get a quick shot so then they could get a stop and get one more bucket before the end of the half. It didn't completely work out, but that was his thought process. It wasn't, I need this three-pointer now to break the record. It was, we're trying to go 2 for 1 and take an even bigger lead into the half. And if that doesn't say everything about like Bruce Thornton, bonkers. I mean, like that's who this guy has been for 4 years, and that's what was on display here in this game. Like the recognition of a 2 for 1 situation, not the recognition of, oh, I am 3 points away from setting the all-time scoring record. Diebler said he didn't realize it in the moment either. He said it was the right play. He said, I had no clue how many points he had at that point in time. At first I was like, man, they're really excited. It was a big shot. Then I'm like, okay. It was a really cool moment. I took a video. It's on my social media channels. The place just went nuts. It was so loud. The crowd, the noise, the excitement, it all met in the moment. And Bruce said, I mean, he'll certainly reflect on that, like kind of, later. in the moment, it just kind of was like they're trying to do like the next thing. And it was really cool to see that. It felt important. If you were in the arena, I think you're probably always going to have that memory with you that like this was a red letter day, scarlet letter day? No, not scarlet letter day. This was a red letter day in Ohio State basketball history. Where the season ultimately goes, you know, they could have 2 more games ahead of them, and then this is all over. I mean, that's a possibility. But we're talking about an all-time moment from a player who I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've heard in the last 2-3 months, or frankly, since he came back for his senior year, how much like fans want this for Bruce. They want Bruce in the tournament. It's like, yeah, they want Ohio State to get in the tournament, but Bruce has to get into the tournament. That is such a talking point, and I feel like you felt that in this game. And for him to hit that 3 and to have that moment, and then certainly to go on and salt the game away, big time. It was a really cool night, really cool experience. There was one other moment that's really going to stick with me, and it's that after the game was over, he's celebrating on the court, and as his teammates are all like surrounding him, Jim Jackson is interviewing him on Fox. And they're all kind of cheering behind him, like the Buckeyes, and like there's kind of people kind of coming and going. And then, not coincidentally, they show the March Madness logo on like the scoreboards, and they start playing that music. Dun 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 dun. I mean, you have to be some kind of dead person not to feel something in that moment. And it felt meaningful to see Bruce being celebrated by his teammates, being interviewed by Jim Jackson. March Madness theme starts playing. Like, let's go, man. Let's go. It's March. Like, this is the best time of year for college basketball. And that stuff was as meaningful to me and as impactful to me out of this game as anything else. I mean, it does. The overall performance does validate some of the things that we've been seeing here, these last couple of weeks. I've talked a lot, I feel like, on here about BartTorvik.com, and I've certainly been referencing that more and more recently because it allows you to sort the data based on like a certain time period. And so you go back to February 1st, which would have Ohio State coming off of that loss at Wisconsin, 92-82 at Wisconsin. Ohio State could not play any sort of appreciable defense. Ohio State, with the loss, dropped to 14-7 overall, 6-5 in the Big Ten, continue to alternate win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Well, since then, now Ohio State is 6-4 since that, has its first 3-game winning streak against high major opponents this season. But if you go over to BartTorvik.com and you sort the data and you just say, how's every team in the nation played from February 1st until this date? Ohio State is the number 13 team in the country. From an efficiency standpoint, Ohio State's 15th on offense, 39th in defense. Their wins above bubble ranks 25th. The net ranking and the wins above bubble, that stuff will all refresh on Sunday, and I'll have I've got a bracketology file that we'll keep updating at dispatch.com. So I will update that tomorrow, sometime after church when we do get that information. But it's clear like this game and this stretch continues to validate how Ohio State has played for the better part of and we're going on 5+ weeks now at this point. It feels like we're seeing a basketball team that is kind of settling into itself and that is playing with a high level of confidence and is playing its best basketball this season. And those numbers back up kind of what we're seeing. And now, because this team is healthy, it's starting to click. And we didn't get Brandon Knoll did not play in this game. He was questionable. He did go through warmups. It sounds like he will play in the Big Ten tournament. We'll see him to some degree in that. And Ohio State, again, as the 8th seed, will play the first game on Thursday. So it'll be 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon Eastern. And frankly, I don't think it's the most favorable draw for Ohio State because the Buckeyes will likely get Iowa. And maybe that just proves to be you took it on the chin when you went there, but maybe it's a different story second time around. We'll see. That there's a lot of it's a very intriguing potential matchup there. But then winning that game gets you a Friday morning showdown with Michigan, which is probably the least desirable draw for any team in this bracket. Nobody wants to play the Wolverines. So it's a bit of a tough potential go for the Buckeyes, and we'll talk more about that when we get the full bracket, and then there's all Big Ten honors will be announced on Tuesday, and we'll have interviews on Tuesday. So I'll kind of wrap all that up into the next episode of the podcast here. But that's where things sit right now. This just, again, it felt like a massive statement about where things are headed, and a reminder that like this team continues to play pretty high level basketball at the most important time of the year. And the confidence in that locker room just continues to grow. I mean, everyone that we talk to, there's a high level of belief that this team has figured some stuff out and is playing for each other. Something that was interesting to me in postgame tonight is that Iowa got referenced like multiple times. I'm looking for some of these quotes here. So, well, I've got too many files open at the same time. But the fact that this team, okay, here. So Bruce Thornton started talking about how this team, he said, we got asked, like, is the NCAA tournament set in stone for you, or has that reality set in yet? And he said, no, I won't believe it till I see it. But he said, we've got the Big Ten tournament. With the type of mojo, swagger, or confidence and swagger we have, I feel like we can make a big run. So then he was asked about, like, why do you guys have so much confidence going forward? He said, the connection of our team right now, we're playing with an unbelievable swagger. We're holding each other accountable at a high level. We understand what we need to win. Any given night, anybody can go off. Everybody's willing to celebrate everyone's accomplishment at a high level. When you have that, you can be very dangerous. So he's asked, like, where's that swagger come from? How has that developed here recently? Bruce said, I feel like it's a process. How we got blown out against Iowa, it's so easy to fold and point fingers. I feel like we came together and bought in. We want to go out with a bang. Everybody feels the team can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. I feel like we can at a very high level. The belief we have in each other right now is super high. Now, Diebler was asked about like moving on from that Iowa game. Because, boy, did it not feel like things were heading in a different direction? I mean, I think anybody that wasn't in that locker room coming out of Carver Hawkeye Arena back on February 25th felt like things were heading in a decidedly darker direction. So this is what Diebler said, quote, we took ownership of the things we did wrong in that game. We talked about it in the locker room at Iowa and said, we're going to leave this here. We're not doing this again. Everybody took ownership. We went around the room. Some words were said, and then we left it there. We moved on. We left it there. This team has embraced that style of coaching. Sort of along those lines, when I talked to Jake leading into the Penn State game, I asked him, like, with all that was coming out of the Penn State game, I asked him, are you worried at all about, like, all the emotions and stuff with senior day? Like, how this team is going to handle all the things that will kind of be coming into play? Like, could that have an adverse effect on your team? And he said no, because if they were going to see that, where like the team got too high from a 1 win, 2 wins, he said if we were going to see that, we would have seen that tonight, meaning at Penn State. But the fact that Ohio State took care of business the way that it did in that moment gave him confidence that Ohio State would approach the Indiana game the right way. Now, what was interesting then was that I did ask him, like, you've talked a lot about, having confidence in your team and responding and all that stuff. But I said, like, there was a lot to kind of grapple with in this game. Were you confident that this team would handle it accordingly? And he said, quote, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous about how we'd handled the emotion and everything this game represented, but I had confidence in the maturity of this group. He said, I also said this is an important moment. We're going to honor a few guys here who deserve to be honored, but how you honor them is with your play, or how you honor them with your play is you do it at a high level. Play with great fight and toughness and be connected. We didn't pretend like that part didn't exist. We prepped the same way. We practiced the same way. We didn't have much talk about it. We addressed it, and our guys are locked in at a high level. He said, I was a little nervous, certainly. The energy in there, a really good team, all that stuff that went into this last home game, our guys, they stepped up. They felt the crowd. They felt the energy. They felt the buzz. Like, that stuff all had an impact on certainly this game, and reminded us of like what this program at its highs can look like. I don't think that necessarily what we saw in this game is like night by night basis replicable, but this was a reminder of how Ohio State peak basketball can look and feel and sound and make you feel. And that might be a good place to, I'd say it might be a good place to wrap this up, but it's worth pointing out too, there were two future Buckeyes in the arena. Anthony Thompson, 2026 signee, McDonald's All-American. They recognized him during a timeout for being a McDonald's All-American. He got a loud roar from the crowd. I have video of it. I haven't published it yet to social media, but I will. So he was here. LJ Smith was here, 2027 commit, up to number 8 in ESPN's rankings for 2027. So he was here as well. So there's like the future of the program on hand to see sold out Jerome Schottenstein Center on senior night as Ohio State clinches an NCAA tournament berth. Like, so you had all that, and boy, the list of former players. Like, I'm sure that there's many guys I didn't see, but like Jerry Lucas was here. Certainly Jim Jackson on the call. Scooney Penn was here. Greg Oden was here. Aaron Kraft was here. JJ Sullinger was here. I know there's guys that I didn't see. I think I saw George Reese. Like, there were a lot of former players on hand to watch this game and to be part of it, and to see what things were coming out of this. So just a big all-around night for Ohio State that now they get a chance to kind of catch their breath a little bit, and it's on to the postseason. And I'll head to Chicago here probably Wednesday night, and we'll see what that looks like at the United Center. But very excited for this next phase of the season, and appreciate those of you. Like I met Adam before the game, came up and said hi, and he had his little guy Hudson. Really cool to get to meet the two of you. Hope Hudson enjoyed the game. That's certainly a pretty neat father-son memory there, to be able to be like, hey, you can tell him that 10 years from now when, Dad, what was Bruce Thornton like? Well, you were there the night that he set the record. And like, that's cool stuff. It's really cool to meet the two of you. Ran into a couple of the Buckeye boys, so that was awesome. Always a pleasure to get to spend a little bit of time with them. Just a great all-around day. And if you'll indulge me for like a minute here, but this was a full basketball day period, because I've been my oldest son Liam plays in Above the Rim. It's a league in Westerville. It's at a church, and along with one of my best friends, a guy named Mike Anderson, we coach a lot of baseball together, and we're coaching this basketball team. And we wrapped up our season today. We came just short of going undefeated, but we had our last game, and they do it up. They have an intro video, and they announce all the lineups, and it's so much fun coaching basketball and seeing like my oldest get really into the sport. And baseball is still like his number one thing, but it was a really fun season, and I have to shout out my Ducks for what was just a really, really fun year. And so Cam, Carter, Colson, Gage, Liam Anderson, Coaster, Max, Samuel, you guys were awesome to coach. I loved every minute of it. And if by some miracle you are listening to this or you hear this, the first thing that we talked about at our very first practice was, I said, I hope that you leave this league or this experience wanting to play more basketball. It's a great sport. Everyone has their own favorite sports. At times I thought like our basketball team looked like a bunch of baseball players playing basketball. But they got so much better over the course of a season, and it was so much fun coaching them, and went right from that win today and drove straight to the Schottenstein Center and got here in time to cover all of the senior day stuff. So there's all kinds of videos posted to dispatch.com and to my various social media channels. Still more to come as well. But I wanted to shout out my Ducks before this all wrapped up. So on that note, as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardy@dispatch.com. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty for getting this out there. I'll be back with you Tuesday. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.